Hi, do you remember your first two-wheeler? I certainly remember mine. This is your lucky day. You might just see that bike again. I'm at the Old Spokes Home Museum on Grosse Ile, and we're getting a very specialized personal tour. We're going to see early bicycles going back to the 1850s, through the middle eras, all the way up to the 70s Stingrays. So stay tuned. You're watching The Collectors. I'm Kent Lund. Let's take a look. I'm with Roger Gauthier. Roger, you've got quite a collection here. I always like to ask collectors, what was the spark that got you started in saying, I want to have bicycles. I like bicycles. I'm interested in bicycles. When did it happen?
Well, I've been doing this for about 25 years. I used to spend a lot of time collecting and restoring cars.
Okay.
And it's gotten very expensive and time consuming to do a car.
Let alone storage.
And then what do you do with them when they're done?
Sure.
Storage is an issue. I've always ridden bikes as a kid, had paper routes, and always rode bikes. And I just like the mechanical simplicity of bicycles. There's no hydraulics, there's no electrics.
Everything's mechanical.
And all there is today, but and it's a lot more unique than collecting cars.
There's a lot of unique bikes here, and what I really find interesting is the manufacturing process is not the process, but every part of the bike is treated like a piece of art. Everything has a shape and a special material and purposely built to do what it does, and this is a long time ago.
Well, there was a period in the 1890s when there were more patents issued regarding bicycles in this country than all other patents combined.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
So it was quite an innovative period.
And so what was the first bike you found that you would call part of your collection?
Probably a Schwinn Phantom.
And that's era is mid-50s, early 50s?
50s, 1950s.
And where'd you find it?
I couldn't tell you.
I guess they start to blend together after a while, huh?
I had one as a kid. I bought it used for $6, and I had no idea what it was. But it was a real heavy-duty Phantom, and I ended up putting a motor on it, a gas motor. It got off a lawnmower, and put that on there, and had a gas tank, Whizzer gas tank.
A Whizzer gas tank, yeah. And so that's how you got involved in the bikes. And I agree with you that car collecting is expensive. These bikes here are not cheap, though. Let's not discount that. These are some special bikes, but storage on cars. You've got 250 bikes in this museum, and if you had 250 cars, you'd have a much bigger museum.
Oh yeah, yeah. Couldn't afford 250 cars. So.
And how did you come up with the Old Spokes Home name?
I stole it from somebody else.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to use it, but everybody insisted I did. It happens to be next door to an old folks home.
This is the fun part, yeah.
So it was appropriate. So that's why I call it the Old Spokes Home of Grosse Ile. So.
Great name, great spot. This is really a wonderful place. Roger, this is laid out very nicely to view bicycles starting from early to late. Is there a particular pattern to the way you've laid this out?
Not really. I built this building myself, and I built it so it could be used commercially at some point in time for retail.
That's a good idea.
There's 2 front doors, there's 2 heating systems, 2 electrical systems, so I can always petition it off.
Great idea.
I built it I wanted it as maintenance free as possible. It's all block and brick and stone. There's nothing has to be painted on the outside. The inside, the floor is just polished concrete.
Yeah.
Just regular concrete polished. And it was actually a lot easier than carpeting or wood or anything else.
And durable.
And
very
durable as you can get. So.
No, it's a
and
very.
then you know, form follows function. I just ended up fitting the bikes in as best they could. I had a few display stands built. There's a lot of them hanging from the ceiling. It maximized the use of space, and a lot of them on the floor. But it just, you know.
And I think, Roger, you're not open like 24 hours a day, or you're open by appointment pretty much only?
I'm open by appointment. I do open on some of the special occasions on Grosse Ile.
The parades and things like that?
Parades and homecoming and
oh, okay, good. That's good to know. Well, it's
something called the Island Fest, and they have various festivals on the island. I'll open it up for that.
I will say this is my second time on the island, and it's a beautiful place for a Sunday or Saturday drive. Bring the whole family, come by the museum. It's pretty neat to see. We appreciate it a lot.
It's located here because I live on the island, so convenient.
He's so selfish. He did it right by his house, so he can come, you know. I don't know where to start, Roger. Nobody on watching this show has probably ever seen one of these.
Well, these are considered the first bicycles, and they were purpose-built. In 1818, the German Bismarck wanted his lands surveyed. So he told the keeper of his forests, Baron von Drace, to survey the lands.
Got it.
And Baron von Drace came up with this. It was purpose-built. He hung his tool bag on the back, pushed his feet along the ground, Fred Flintstone style.
Okay.
And there was a white mark on the wheel, and he counted revolutions. That's how he got his distance.
So maybe a wheel was 3 feet or 4 feet, and then he could.
It's very simple, you know.
Yeah. And so by counting revolutions,
geometry,
he knew how far he went. Okay.
And he counted revolutions. That's how he got the distance. They were never viable transportation. They became a bit of a fad. People would push them around the streets just for fun. And they're also considered their first mountain bikes because it didn't take the German kids long to push them up to the top of the hills and roll down.
See how fast they could go.
So yeah.
So this is a German bike.
Well, originally it was built by Baron von Drace.
Okay.
These are reproductions. Wood 200 years old doesn't hold up well.
But a similar genre in that they worked the same way. You ran your feet on the ground. There was no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In 1839, a Scottish carpenter by the name of Kirkpatrick Macmillan put crank-type pedals on them and push your feet like this and you could move along. Again, never a viable transportation, but that was the evolution of bicycles.
And I heard you mention, Roger, the term hobby horse.
Yes.
Is this a hobby horse? Is it because of this carving?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a horse. It looks more like a hippopotamus.
I thought the same thing.
This may be original. I don't know. The other two are reproductions.
That's always a discussion in collecting. Is it original or is it a knockoff? And we all experience that and go through that. And now we're going to look at the next variation on bicycles. What do we have here?
These are called velocipedes, and it really evolved the bikes into a more modern configuration. They put pedals on the front. They figured out that the bigger the wheel, the faster you could go. The technology was wagon wheel technologies, as you see there. That's what they had, with steel rims, and they got the name Bone Shakers because if you can imagine trying to ride these down the cobblestone streets of the 1860s, they weren't very comfortable and they were never viable transportation, but they were the step in the evolution.
And I noticed the way the seat is set up, it's almost on a spring to give it some, make it a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
Then we go into the big wheels.
Then we go into the high wheels. They're called ordinaries, high wheels, or penny farthings. Penny farthing was, of course, the English coins, the big penny and the small farthing.
Oh.
And these were the first comfortable, rideable bicycles. They were actually fairly comfortable. They got to be very, very popular. There was a lot of clubs, even raced them, of course, like people do race everything. And the way they were designed, the bigger the wheel, the faster you could go. And you sized these according to how tall you were. The bigger inseam you had, the bigger bike you could ride, bigger wheel,
Okay.
and the faster you could go. You see a smaller one there that maybe a woman or a smaller person would ride, and the big wheel. They were very comfortable, they were fairly fast. They went to solid rubber tires instead of the...
Yeah, I see the solid
rib.
rubber, and I see the metal and then the solid rubber.
There was an inherent problem with these in that they were a little dangerous. If you fell off them, you were pretty high off the ground. But more so, the seat position had you sitting like this and weight forward. If you hit a bump or something, you could do a header, go right over the handlebars. So they weren't the safest thing in the world, but it took a little skill to ride them. There was some attempts made to make them safer. Like the King here had crank-type pedals like this, and it kept the weight back, so you weren't as likely to fall over the handlebars. The Star put the small wheel on the front, and you wouldn't do a header off that. And again, it was pretty fast and pretty comfortable. The problem with that was you could hit a bump and the front wheel could come off the ground and you'd lose your steering. So they all had inherent problems.
And this pedal system looks to be a pump style system?
Yeah.
Okay, got
Like
it.
that.
Yeah.
Rather than round and round.
Yeah. And it's got an interesting saddle, leather saddle. All these have pretty much a nice leather saddle. Is this more of a young person's bike here?
This one? Yeah, well, the Kangaroo had a little bit of gearing on it.
Oh.
So they could use a smaller wheel. And that was a kind of a precursor to the safety bikes.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about safety bikes eventually.
Yeah.
This was an interesting one. Of the handlebars are much different than the other ones.
Yeah. They had, most of them had spoon brakes, which is just like a friction on the front wheel.
Oh, that's an interesting thing. All it does is friction on the top of the wheel.
Yeah.
All right.
And you had various others. This one it's a guess, 1865, is probably a blacksmith-built bike, probably a one-off. It's impossible to really date it, but it's pretty crude.
I guess what I'm surprised at is I always thought of these bikes as being turn of the century, but they go back to 1850, 1860.
Well, high wheels were popular in the 1880s.
1880s. That was when they're popular.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are still clubs today that ride high wheels. And
they dress the period, I think, sometimes.
you might have seen them at the Greenfield Village. They
Okay.
ride around, but they're still fairly popular. There's a gentleman from New Boston that he and his daughter rode high wheel bikes coast to coast, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and then they rode them from north to south.
Wow.
All the way down to...
That must have
Florida.
taken quite a while.
You're retired, you have time. So.
And this is an interesting bike here. It's two big wheels
Well, this is...
with a transmission.
This is fascinating bikes. Tricycles were a little bit popular then, and they had 3 wheels rather than 2. And the really neat thing about this is some of the technology. This actually had rack and pinion steering. And that goes back to 1886, and you didn't see rack and pinion in cars until what, the 1950s or 60s?
Yeah.
It also had a drum brake.
Yeah.
And it had a wheelie bar for dragsters.
Now, how would you use that? How would you?
That's a wheelie bar. So if it kicked up, it wouldn't go too far.
Okay.
You wouldn't go completely over.
Well, I look at the manufacturing here, and I see real precision things. How are these wheels? They're pneumatic?
No, these are solid rubber.
Okay.
Pneumatic tires came along in about 1892.
Oh, that early?
Yeah. And so everything before then is solid. And there's actually a wire on the inside of this. It's not quite solid. And they would, at the joint, they would twist the wire and pull it together.
Okay. That's a fascinating bike. Is there another bike here in this area, Roger, that you think is pretty unique?
Well, the Kangaroo was one of the first ones with chains.
Is it Australian by any chance?
No.
That's just the name they came up with?
And they're just the name they came. It's Columbia. That's an American company.
Oh, it's a Columbia?
Yeah.
The same Columbia that made bikes into the 50s?
Columbia is the oldest manufacturer in the country. Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to see those bikes in another series. Okay.
Yep. The Crypto, Bantam, which was made in England, had a little bit of gearing in there so they could get by with a smaller wheel. And those are just evolutions, different things they tried.
Fascinating. Now we're going to take a look at the next innovation. I think it's called safety bikes.
Safety bikes.
So let's, Roger, which is the safety bike in your museum here that really starts off the program?
These two up here are early safety bikes, and they're called safety bikes because, unlike the high wheelers, you weren't likely to do a header on them. And they ended up with equal size wheels, tires, and a chain drive, which gave them gearing, which gave them the speed of the high wheels with a much smaller wheel. That was a phenomenal revolution in bicycles because everybody could ride these now. And they got extremely popular. Everybody was riding safety bikes.
About what year did this start?
1886.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So they overlapped the high wheels, but they pretty much killed the high wheels. High wheels stuck around as a fad, I guess. But the safety bikes caused an explosion in bicycle transportation. Everybody could ride them. They were fast. They were easy to ride. And they did various things to accommodate the roads at the time. You see that real spring seats and the front suspensions on them, all designed to cushion the rides. And they still use the solid rubber tires to start with. Pneumatic tires came along in about 1892. Okay. And that was just like in 1 year, everybody switched to pneumatics from solid rubber.
Is this particular one you have in the museum an American bike or a European bike?
These are both American bikes.
Were the Americans by any chance innovators in this bicycle program?
It was a worldwide thing.
Okay.
It was a worldwide evolution. But yeah, there's companies like Columbia that have been around forever.
The oldest bike manufacturer?
Yeah.
In America?
In America, considered the oldest manufacturer.
Okay. And where are they located?
They were
where were they located?
Out east.
East Coast, okay.
Boston.
Okay, Boston, okay.
Boston. As I said, they caused a tremendous explosion of bicycles. And what that did was all of a sudden everybody and their brother started making bicycles. And competition drives down the price of bicycles. These were expensive. These were probably $135 bikes back then, which today's dollars is several $1,000s.
Oh my gosh.
So they weren't that affordable. But as the production increased and all the manufacturers got into it, the safety bikes actually got simplified. Some of these are pretty pretty elaborate frame designs. But what happened was they standardized into what's called the diamond frame bike. It's a much simpler frame. This bike is from 1898, and the price dropped dramatically. This bike was sold by Sears and Roebuck for $23.75. There's the original bill of sale up there.
It's always good to have that.
If you look at this bike carefully, it is almost exactly the same as today's bicycles. It could be a very modern bike with the size of the wheels, the diamond frame, the seat and the handlebars. Bikes really haven't changed from this.
Actually, this is like the racing bikes with the teeth in the pedal. It's not a rubber pedal.
There's all kinds of different pedals. Yeah. And they evolved into touring bikes and racing bikes. Racing started to become popular, particularly in velodromes. And the racing bike typically has the downturned handlebars, the narrower tires, higher pressure tires. And the racing bikes never had springs in the seats. You wanted a very stable position between the pedals and the seat. And
wooden handlebars.
Yeah, you saw steel and wood.
And is this bent or is this?
It's bent.
It's
yes.
a bent. Okay. Cork for the grips.
Yeah, that's one variation.
Okay.
Yeah, you saw leather and cork and wood and everything under the sun.
And out of curiosity, can you still get reproduction tires for a bike like this?
That's what these are.
Okay, somebody actually makes these.
Yeah, these are reproduction tires. They're solid. Those are not pneumatic.
Okay.
This bike would have had pneumatic tires.
Okay.
But
for display purposes, it works great. Yeah.
For display purposes. But yeah, you can still buy some pneumatics that will fit these, particularly on the racing bikes.
Now, behind me is a beautiful bike.
Oh,
It's wooden with metal connectors. It's exquisitely made.
That's the Old Hickory is one of my favorites.
You're calling this the Old Hickory?
Yeah.
What a great name.
Manufactured by Tonk Manufacturing in Chicago. And what's neat about this bike is it's pretty much all wood. The diamond, what we call the diamond, is one piece, steam bent. It's hollow laminated hickory, but it's steam bent. The fittings are really neat. They're high carbon steel, and if you look at those fittings that are 125 years old, look at the condition of them. The metal is superb.
I bet there's a dozen patents right here on this bike. I don't know, but you can see there's so many unique parts.
I haven't researched that,
Wow, that is a handsome bike.
Yeah. And there's I don't know if you can see it up there, a hickory convertible. That top bar came off.
Oh, it's for ladies.
For ladies, yeah.
Okay.
And the bikes from this period on never really changed.
There's a long span of very similar styles.
Very similar, all the way through the 1930 till about 1930 before they started to change again. There's some interesting racing bikes. This would have been a deluxe touring bike of the era, 1928.
These large wheels, it looks like, too. 26-inch, 28-inch?
Those are generally 28s.
Okay.
This one is fascinating. 1899 Rambler shaft drive.
Oh, a shaft drive, wow.
And I don't know if you can see that shaft drive. This is 1899, And they didn't incorporate shaft drives in motorcycles till when? The
And probably BMW.
1950s or 60s,
Yeah,
1960s. So the technology there. It also had a rear suspension in it and a leaf spring front suspension in it.
Leaf spring.
So
And it looks like a tool kit or a place to put your valuables when you're...
Yeah, they had those around.
Interesting. Yeah.
Some of the bikes back then, if you remember the old dry cell batteries for the headlights.
Oh, okay.
Prior to that, lights were popular on bicycles, and they burned carbide or kerosene or anything that would burn.
And just briefly, carbide, is there water in the container? You drop the carbide rock in there and it creates gas?
Something like that.
Yeah. And the carbide lamps were used in mining too.
Yep.
Well, that's a beautiful bike. Those headlights are gorgeous. Mm-hmm. Everything was stylish. Everything was really designed.
Well, this one is fascinating. The Rex here, you notice there's 3 wheels on the Rex. And what it was the rear wheel was connected to the seat, and that was an attempt to cushion the ride. The problem with the Rex was that one of the most important things about riding a bicycle for efficiency is the distance between the pedals and the seat never changes. That's why you see a racing bike is all fixed. And
it's built to the driver.
That gives you a constant pressure. The problem with the Rex was you hit a bump and your feet would come off the pedals.
It would change the dynamic.
It changed the dynamics. So the Rex never sold well.
Sure looks good though.
Yep.
Wow, and the seat mechanism on that see how it slides? It'll slide on there to adjust that, it looks to me. And the seat mechanism itself, the casting, and it's polished, and it's really a beautiful piece of machinery, really. Yeah.
And that was expensive too when prices were coming down. You see this 1889 Columbia Light Roadster original price was $130, and this one was $23.75. So prices plummeted.
How far apart were those dates?
They were comparable dates.
Oh, okay.
They were comparable.
Well, just like in automobiles, when they figured out the assembly line and how to manufacture it more quickly, price came down. It's free enterprise. It's America. It's great. Yep. One of the important things about the safety bike aspect was that women rode bicycles, and in that day, a lot of women wore skirts. So, Roger, how did they handle that?
Well, the ladies' bikes were built specifically for ladies, and what they entailed was a drop frame, so the ladies didn't have to swing their legs over the top. Generally smaller seats and narrower handlebars, but back then the ladies all wore skirts, and they came up with skirt guards and chain guards to keep the ladies' skirts out of the spokes. So there was quite an accommodation built for women. Some of the bikes were convertibles with a bar that would come on and off.
Okay, sure.
They weren't real popular, but the ladies' bike with the skirt guard was unique.
And that skirt guard is really precision. It's very close to the sprocket. It's beautifully done.
And skirt guards evolved in the 1940s and 1950s. You can see the metal skirt guards, elaborate skirt guards they had on some of the bikes even then.
It's very streamlined too.
Yep.
And here we've got some wooden. That's not really a safety bike, or is that?
No,
it's pretty early.
Yeah, it's just an early frame design on a safety bike, 1891.
And over here behind us, we've got a chain guard that is all wooden. It's made with wood. It's strung with string, I guess you'd call it. Beautifully done. Really unique. All for the lady riders.
Wooden wheels on all the bikes back then were very, very common.
And is that a pneumatic tire or?
That's a pneumatic tire. Yes.
Pneumatic tire. Okay, good. Well, that's interesting. So stay tuned. We're going to do 2 episodes, and the next one is post-war bikes.